Well, somewhere in that picture is the site of the future Treasure Hill project, and joining me to tell us a little bit more about it are the Sweeney brothers, Pat, Mike, and Ed. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
You know, we have been talking about this project on the program and in town for months now. You guys have not done a lot to really present your side of this somewhat controversial project, but let's start right now. Tell us a little bit about the history of this, how you guys came to buy the land that is going to become Treasure Hill.
Originally, my father got involved with some Irishmen in the 1950s, and they had the idea that Park City could be like Aspen. The town was a ghost town essentially then, and they bought most of the town for back taxes, turned around, gave half that to the mining company, enticed the mining company to get an industrial revenue bond, and with the help of President Kennedy and some other luck, the mining company started the Park City Mountain Resort. So that's how my brothers and I got started. At that time, we were, well, I was 7. And we had been raised up until that point near here where the Jordanelle Dam is in Hailstone. And I went to school in Heber. I can't remember where you guys went, but
we both.
I didn't go to school.
He didn't go to school.
He
was still a gleam in somebody's eye.
So that was a long time ago, and my father took that beginning and horse traded and spent some of the profits from that investment getting us educated, and then we came back to Park City. My brother Ed and I lived here and got involved, and at some point, it was probably in the early 80s, my father just said, I'm out of here. I've done this long enough. He'd been at it for 25 years, and we took over. Then we really got involved and put together the Sweeney master plan because there had been 9 years of previous efforts with a number of approaches to get an approval, and they'd gone nowhere. And we put together the idea of putting it all in one bunch and going to the city and seeing if we could get a package.
Now, you know, a lot of people have talked about this, that here it was, you know, it was the 1980s, and, you know, times have changed a lot here in Park City. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about this project is right there, you mentioned it's the master plan, and that the master plan for this project is not just what's on Treasure Hill. Maybe Mike, maybe you want to talk about
Sure.
You know, all the components of this project.
Well, the master plan itself, which Pat Sweeney, my brother Pat, really put a lot of his hard-earned money and a whole bunch of his life. I think it's his mistress, is the mountain there. I'm pretty sure of that. So the master plan basically looked at all of our assets, and we were looking originally at just clustering everything down at the base, where the base is currently today. It was just going to be another
the lower Main Street.
Lower
base.
Main Street. There was no lower Main Street. There was just a field. It was a desolate field, and there was no skiing into town. And out of that master plan, we ended up doing the ski lift, opening up Treasure, agreeing with the city to give them 100 acres once we get this thing all approved. So we had 97% open space. But what the master plan did, it helped develop everything north of Heber and created Lower Main Street. There wasn't a Lower Main Street. And with our partners, Jack Mahoney, John Paul DeJorian, Skip Scherf, Harry Reid, we put a whole bunch of properties together, went to the city, and we were able to create Lower Main Street. And with that, I think we've made a really wonderful asset for the city. And Treasure is the last part of this whole exercise. But every time we've done a project in Park City, for whatever reason, the brothers must be pretty darn slow because it takes us forever to get through the planning process.
Well, it must be, because you're brothers and you have to work together, and there's probably internal fights. Oh, Mom always liked you best. And,
She was my mom.
so let's point out. So you've pointed out that much of what's on Lower Main is part of this project, and I think that's probably the number one thing that has been lost in this argument of, well, they had this development approval and they haven't done anything with it.
Right.
That's really not the case, and that was proved in this by this independent counsel.
Well, we had, when Jody Burnett, who was retained by the city, a land use attorney, a fellow barrister, made the determination that said, yes, our rights were vested, that we've done due diligence, that we've moved it ahead, and this particular 11-acre site is the last part of an approved 20-year master plan. And that we had planned it that way, is that we did all of the smaller projects, and then this, we always have been working on it. So it's not as if it was a surprise. It was there in 1986. It was public record. People just sort of thought, well, the Sweeneys would never develop it. And we put in the trails. We gave them property. We've allowed our neighbors to use property to build off of Woodside, et cetera, et cetera. But it is the culmination. We have investors. It is a big project, but the city told us 20 years ago, go up, not out. And we said, fine, give us the parameters. Here are the parameters. And we've lived up to all of those. And it's tough because what people see is they always show pictures of an aerial view, which nobody, unless you're flying in a helicopter, will ever see the project. It's part of 120 acres. It's 11 acres, and we actually build on 3 acres. So it is a vertical project, and it's what the city asked us to do. So we're simply saying, okay, that's what we're going to do. And it's a NIMBY issue for a lot of it is, we're here, we don't want you to do that.
And it's coming from people who didn't live here necessarily 20 years ago.
I think some of them weren't born yet.
Yeah.
I mean, Pat and Mike and I have been here a long time. But no, I think for the most part, on the Lowell Empire side, these are folks that have moved in subsequent to certainly when the master plan was approved and when we started doing these projects, and it's always been there. It's just all of a sudden they realize, oh, shoot, now we have to do something.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the project. You said it is relatively large. Let's talk about what we're talking about here. It's only on a 3-acre parcel, but it does go up. We're talking 200 plus rooms. Or units, I guess, is the official term.
A good comparison would be 2 mountainsides and 1 legacy lodge.
Okay.
That's a fairly comparable volume above ground to what we're proposing. And that sits on 123 acres. Now, also on that 123 acres, there are 8 home sites. All but one of those has either been built or under construction, and those are on the edge of things. There's a couple off of 5th Street, built by Larry Meadows. There's a couple off of Upper Norfolk, built by myself and a friend. There's one off of King Road, built by Bob's Fire. There's one that hasn't been built on, and then there's one that's up on top that you really can't see from Old Town that I'm currently building a small home on. But the heart of the project is really what you see if you're at the post office and look up to the west. And that's the open space that the City Council back in 1986 said, this is worth it. This is worth having these guys go up instead of out. And that's really what it's all about. If people want to get a sense of what it would be like, the best thing I could tell them to do is go up and drive down Lowell Avenue and look at Mountainside. Our project is sunken into the hill, and from most views, standing on ground, you will not see but a third of the buildings.